The night was quiet, the streetlights casting long, trembling shadows across neatly trimmed hedges as neighbors drifted off to sleep, until the sound of shattering glass and a desperate scream sliced through the stillness, leaving a sense of dread hanging in the air. On the front porch of a modest suburban home, a woman lay motionless, her eyes wide open, fixed in horror. Feet. A familiar face stood frozen in shock. The neighbor she greeted with a smile just hours earlier. That moment would shatter trusting facades and unravel a nightmare that no one saw coming. This was the night when a friendly neighbor became the prime suspect. It happened in a quiet cul-de-sac in the outskirts of a small town, a place where everybody knew each other, where children rode bicycles freely and doors were rarely locked. The victim was 34-year-old Hannah Wells, a schoolteacher, beloved by her colleagues and adored by her community for her kindness, bright laughter, and genuine warmth. She lived alone in a cozy, two-story cottage with ivy creeping up its pale walls. Across the narrow street lived 38-year-old David Moran, affable, polite, always ready with a wave or a quick good morning. He worked as a freelance graphic designer, often seen carrying a laptop bag, clipboard in hand, off to a modest studio space on Main Street. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, no obvious motive for wrongdoing. It was a cold evening in late October, leaves rustling underfoot, air crisp with approaching winter. The sort of calm, predictable night where nothing out of the ordinary should unfold. Yet by 10:47 p.m., the tranquility was broken forever. Earlier that evening, Hannah had returned home from a parent-teacher meeting at the local primary school. She set down her bag, switched on soft lamps, and lit a scented candle in her living room, preparing to grade papers over a cup of chamomile tea. Around the same time, David drove up in his compact sedan, reversed into his own driveway, and climbed out, glancing over to Hannah's house as she stood by her front window, watering potted geraniums. He nodded politely. She waved in, return warm, neighborly, innocent. That was the last normal human interaction that cul-de-sac would ever see. Sometime later, perhaps after 10 p.m., a cat, Hannah's tabby named Ember, began yowling incessantly at the front door. Neighbors heard the plaintive cries, but dismissed them. Cats sometimes howl at night. But when the wailing persisted, one of them stepped onto her porch to check. When no one answered, and the yowling turned frantic, the neighbor peeked through the frosted glass. The silhouette of a body, motionless. Through the window cracked open by a cooling breeze, a faint metallic scent drifted out. It triggered panic. Doors were knocked. Phones, dim-lit lights flicked on. And once inside, horror. Hannah lay sprawled across the living room floor, candle still burning, tea still steaming on the side table. Her eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. Her neck bore a deep, single stab wound, the blade cleanly inserted, then withdrawn. Blood pooled in a widening circle beneath her head. Ember hissed and darted away into the darkness. The soft rustle of pages lay scattered around her, torn sheets fluttering under the lamp's glow. The room looked undisturbed in parts. No sign of forced entry, no overturned furniture, no robbery. Her wallet and phone were on the coffee table, keys still in the lock. Everything pointed to someone she knew, someone she trusted. The first officer to arrive, Detective Sarah Monroe, crouched beside the body, flashlight in hand. No signs of forced entry, she murmured, glancing toward the slightly open back door. A police cordon sealed off the house. Neighbors were ushered away. As word spread, the cul-de-sac filled with anxious faces, hushed whispers, shock turning into fear. Who could do such a thing? Who among the friendly smiles hiding behind curtains was capable of murder? The investigation began almost instantly. Forensic teams dusted for prints. Investigators scoured the home for DNA, fibers, any trace of the attacker. But at first, nothing conclusive. The windows were clean. No fingerprints on the doorknob. No sign of weapon left behind. It was as if the killer vanished into thin air. Detectives interviewed every neighbor in the street, every parent at the school, every person who had spoken to Hannah on that fateful evening. Stories aligned. Everyone saw David pull in around 8:30, walk past Hannah's house around 8:45, and then retreated indoors. No one saw him leave afterwards. Security cameras on nearby businesses recorded nothing after 9 o'clock. His car remained parked until midnight. Not until midnight did a movement drive his neighbor's suspicion. A figure in jeans slipping into the car, bags in hand, the car speeding away. The timestamp was vague, the footage grainy, but enough to stir unease. Then an anonymous tip arrived at the station late that night. A neighbor's shaking claim to have heard raised voices coming from Hannah's porch about half an hour after the murder and recognized the voices David's. The tipster said the words, "I told you to stop," followed by a gasp. The investigators tracked down the source, a woman living 2 houses away. She seemed credible, frightened, her voice trembling. She recited exactly what she heard. That tip shifted suspicion. David was detained for questioning early the next morning. Under the bright glare of interrogation room lights, he appeared calm, expressions carefully composed. He claimed he left his house around 9:15 for a late-night meeting at the downtown cafe. Emailed his client, then returned around 11. He insisted he never saw Hannah that night. His phone's GPS pinged near Main Street until 9:05, then again at 10:59 near his own home. But there was a 54-minute gap. No record of calls or messages. No one he claimed to meet corroborated his alibi. Yet even as suspicion grew, the case against him remained circumstantial. No murder weapon, no definite proof tying him to the blade. No DNA, no patron at the cafe placing him there. Only his word. The forensic team turned to alternate leads. They searched nearby sheds, alleyways, trash bins, local pawn shops. Nothing. The autopsy ruled the wound fatal but quick. Time of death between 10:15 and 10:45. If David had left at 9:15 and returned by 11, there was time, but no evidence linking him to the crime scene at that window. In the days that followed, tension in the community simmered. Neighbors looked at each other with suspicion. Doors were locked. Children kept indoors, some faithful to David, claiming it impossible he would kill someone so kind. Others torn. They had seen him at his door that night, had heard the chaos rumor spread. Whispers turned to rumors. Maybe jealousy. Maybe a forbidden obsession. Maybe a dispute unknown to others. The object of speculation became, why would a quiet neighbor suddenly commit murder? Then, a breakthrough. At the same time, investigators uncovered that Hannah had recently changed her will, naming no beneficiaries in David's direction, but generously leaving items to distant relatives she seldom contacted, which meant no obvious inheritance motive for David. Meanwhile, her personal journal, found locked in a small drawer, was open to a final entry dated the same evening. She spoke of being watched, of eyes in the dark, of a sense that someone had started following her after school hours, of footsteps behind her on empty sidewalks, of nightmares turning real. The entry ended with a chilling question. How well can we ever know another person? Investigators widened their net. They canvassed local clinics, hospitals. Was there a person recently treated for a knife wound? They questioned homeless shelters, street beggars who roamed near the neighborhood. They checked pawn shops for knives sold or discarded. Still, the blade vanished. Meanwhile, David's lawyer demanded proof before charges. The district attorney hesitated. On one side, motive was unclear, evidence circumstantial. On the other, community pressure and fear begged for justice. Then came the shock turning point. A neighbor-ass surveillance camera across the street, unnoticed until now, recorded a silhouetted Hannah's back window around 10:20, extinguishing the light from inside, then retreating shortly after. Zooming in, forensic video enhancement revealed a slender figure, hunched slightly, carrying a small bag. The gait was familiar to several school parents, a man seen waiting for a student occasionally. Not David. Not someone known to live on the street. A cryptic identity. Investigators cross-checked with school attendance logs, volunteer rosters, parents' registry. No match. Could it be someone not connected to the school? A stranger? A stalker? While the investigation entered its deepest phase, the community was torn. Some whispered that David would walk free if not for community hysteria. Innocent man caught by circumstantial wind. Others felt haunted by their own ignorance. How could they have overlooked someone lurking in plain sight? The streetlights no longer felt comforting. Windows were shuttered, hedges trimmed cautiously. Fear had replaced familiarity. Charges against David were dropped for lack of evidence. He left town the next week, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a face etched with exhaustion. His goodbye was silent. No words, no confrontation, just absence. Police released a brief statement. Suspect released. Investigation ongoing. The case was never closed. The DNA evidence remained partial, unclassified. The silhouette remained unidentified. The knife was never recovered. The journals, the wax, the vague silhouette, all that survived, whetting doubt and fear, but not truth. Yet the family of the victim, distant relatives summoned to mourn, stood silent in the small funeral home under gray skies. In their eyes, grief, but also something darker. Longing for justice, for answers. A few neighbors erected a makeshift memorial on the cul-de-sac street corner. A bouquet, a candle, a handwritten sign. For Henna, gone but not forgotten. The cat, Embar, disappeared soon after, presumably taken in by relatives, never seen again. The house sat empty, windows boarded, garden overgrown. To this day, passing drivers glance curiously at the neglected cottage, at the silent street once full of laughter. Some claim to see a flicker of candlelight inside at night, or imagine shape against the window blinds. Others avoid the cul-de-sac altogether. The tragedy left a scar, not just on a woman's life, but on the community's innocence. No suspect was ever arrested. No trial was held. The only certainty is that at least one person walks free. Perhaps someone among us. Someone unremarkable. Someone we pass every day. The mystery remains unsolved. Now, as we close this chapter in the vault, ask yourself, when you greet your neighbor with a friendly nod, do you really know who stands behind that wave? Could the person smiling next door hide a darkness you would never expect? And if someone vanished tomorrow, what clues lie in your memories, your greetings, your everyday disregard? If you want justice for the innocent. For voices silenced too soon, subscribe to Midnight Crime Vault, hit the bell, and together we'll chase the shadows until the truth is found.